I used to think the most dangerous place to fall in love is a kitchen. There are knives, yes, and honest light, and the ritual of doing things together that makes bad ideas feel like teamwork. Turns out kitchens are nothing compared to offices with soft lamps and a box of tissues on every flat surface. A kitchen lets you see the mess. A therapist's office is designed to hide it. I'm Ethan, 33, product manager in Chicago, which means I spend my days convincing engineers and executives that their ideas are identical and both of them are right. I believe in timelines, retros, and keeping receipts. My wife Mara is a copywriter who can make 12 soap sound like it will save your marriage. We met at the Vic during an indie show where the singer played the same three chords until everyone decided they were hymns. She bumped my shoulder, apologized, laughed, and asked if I wanted to be tall and useful and get us 2 beers. I was neither tall nor useful, but I came back with the beers and she kissed my cheek to test out a future. We did the thing. 3 years of dating, one move to a one-bed in Lakeview with a kitchen you could describe as commendable for a submarine, a wedding at a converted warehouse with ferns, vows that referenced inside jokes, and a honeymoon where we decided "we" was the easiest word in the language. We fought like people who think conflict is a surprise guest, not part of a lease. Then the world shifted, offices dissolved into couches, and our apartment became an argument about whose Zoom was more important. Mara's clients wanted pandemic optimism without numbers. My roadmap wanted everything yesterday. We were fine until we weren't. Couples therapy started as a gift, Mara's idea. If we do it while it's small, it won't get big, she said, which is true of fires and lies and nothing else. Our insurance directory coughed up a list of names. I did my spreadsheet thing, credentials, availability, modality like I understood the word, and we landed on a man on the edge of mid-40s with a diffident smile, Dr. Rowan Sutter, LMFT. The headshot was all cardigan and corner lamp. His website used words like attunement and repair. He took our plan. He had a portal. He had Sunday afternoon slots. The first session was a dance where nobody knew who picked the song. He asked us to talk about how we fight. Mara said, "He turns into a spreadsheet," and smiled at me as if translating a flaw into a quirk could be an act of love. I said, "She makes everything a story with a villain and a moral," and I meant it as an observation, and it came out like a wound. He nodded. He reflected. He gave us handouts with circles and arrows. EFT, he called it, emotionally focused therapy. We were supposed to learn our negative cycle, the looping choreography where I withdraw and she pursues and we both bury the part where we're scared. Rowan was very good at making Mara feel seen. That's not a complaint, that's the job. But there is a kind of seeing that feels like a spotlight and a kind that feels like a hand on your shoulder, and I started to wonder which one we were getting. He'd say, "Mara, when he goes to numbers, what happens in your body?" And she'd talk about her chest getting tight and her dad never listening and how budget meetings feel like winter. He'd say, "Ethan, can you slow down and reach for her?" And I'd do a sentence like I was trying to pass a test. "I hear you. I want us." Sometimes it helped. Sometimes I felt like a man paying to be given a script. Boundaries at the start were clear. We signed an intake that said no social media, no outside contact except scheduling, no secrets. If one person tells him something the other should know, he either gets permission to share or doesn't hold it. He used the portal diligently. He sent homework PDFs. He billed insurance under 900-847 family therapy with patient present, which meant I showed up even when I wished I didn't. Somewhere in month 3, the room tilted. Mara's individual check-ins started lingering past the hour. "He's got a cancellation," she'd text. "He asked if I wanted to unpack something from work." She'd come home luminous and tired, the way you look after a cry you wanted to have. He suggested a weekend intensive. He called it a deep dive. He said sometimes partners can't get to the thing in 50 minutes. He recommended Mara do the first day solo so she can find words without worrying she's hurting you. He looked at me in that slow clinician way and asked if I could be generous. I'm not proud of how badly I want to be the kind of man a clinician would approve of. "If it helps," I said. Mara squeezed my hand and sent me a text that night from the living room, even though I was in the bedroom. "Thank you for trusting me." I wanted to. I did. I also check our insurance portal like it's a stock ticker. It's not control, it's trauma from a billing department that once sent me to collections for a flu shot. That's why I saw it. A claim from Rowan's billing service for family psychotherapy without patient, telehealth, 60 minutes, dated a Wednesday at 11:30 p.m. I had been asleep. The claim labeled the session extended check-in safety. Under diagnosis, Z6320, problems in relationship with spouse or partner. Under place of service, ZO2 telehealth. underprovider memo, late night anxiety. The claim had a note in the corner, patient authorized out of hours contact. I told myself this was a good thing, that my wife was anxious and reached out and our therapist responded and the world had served us. Then the next week, there were two more, one at 10,052 p.m., one at 12,017 a.m., 30 minutes each. Then two daytime individual psychotherapy, codes that our plan would only reimburse if there was a documented medical necessity. I'm not the diagnosis police. I also know medical necessity is a phrase that can do anything if you stare at it long enough. I asked Mara softly, "How are your check-ins going? Are you sleeping after?" She smiled like a person whose secret is a pet. "He's very helpful," she said. "He told me a lot of what you call logics is actually a shame shield. Isn't that wild? Like when you're calm, it's because you're avoiding feeling anything." "That tracks," I said, "because I am a recovering emotional adult, and sometimes you clap for your own indictment." He also said, "You might not be safe to process certain things with," she added, casual as weather, "that I should get strong by myself before I try to lift with you." "Did he use the word safe?" I asked. "Don't get lawyery," she said, and kissed me like punctuation. Rowan started texting from his personal number instead of the portal. I only knew because a scheduling ping came through while she was in the shower and I set her phone on the vanity, crisis line open tonight. "Might text you at 11 if you're spinning." The name at the top was Rowan Therapy. The photo was not his headshot, it was a lighthouse. "We had a small fight about towels that wasn't about towels." She said, "I have a tone." I said towel fighting is a symbiont that grows on two people who aren't sleeping. We both apologized the next day because we're not monsters. She asked Rowan for an emergency add-on. She came back smelling like his office. Lavender, tea, rules. I went looking for reasons to trust. I found an actual rule book. The American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy has a code of ethics. Therapists should not text for therapy. They should keep contact clinically necessary and documented. They should not accept gifts. They should avoid dual relationships. They should not have sexual relationships with a client or former client for at least 2 years, and never if there's any potential harm. I wasn't in the neighborhood of that worst thing. I was collecting policies the way civilians collect charms. The weekend intensive landed on the calendar with the gravity of a wedding. Saturday, 9 to 4. "It's at his office," she said. "He has a bigger room for intensives. He asked me to come for the last hour Sunday for repair." The plan felt surgical. I said yes. I made pancakes the morning of like a man sending a soldier to the front with carbs. Mara kissed me like I was a blessing and left with a tote bag and a sweater you can cry into. An hour later, while cleaning up the sink because anger makes me domestic, my phone pinged with a spam warning on a call from our insurer's fraud department. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened. The voice was that cheerful flat of people who are paid to be careful. "We've noticed a pattern of out-of-network telehealth services billed to your account outside standard hours. If you have a moment, please confirm whether these services were rendered." I called back. The rep read dates. I said yes to all except one that landed on a night when Mara was sitting on the floor next to me, assembling an IKEA shelf and cursing capitalism. I corrected that one. The rep sounded relieved and tired. "We're seeing an uptick in boundary testing," she said, careful as a surgeon. "Just make sure any emergency use is clinically indicated." When Mara got home, she looked like a person who had survived a storm. She also looked like a person who had discovered she enjoys storms if she gets to name them. "It was intense," she said, half laughing. "We did an exercise about my inner ledger. You keep one, I keep one, and mine is full of debt." "Debt you owe me?" I asked, aiming for curiosity and landing on something with a small, sharp edge. "Debt I owe myself," she said. "Debt I keep using you to collect." Saturday night, her phone hummed as she fell asleep. "Proud of you. Remember the safe word if dreams go hot? Put your feet on the floor. Text if you need anchor." It was Rowan. He was texting at 12:43 a.m. I watched the dots. He added, "Sending the song." At 1 in the morning, I heard the opening bars of Holocene, barely audible from her phone. Bon Iver, the song we danced to in our kitchen when we were 27 and believed in crockpots like they could make us older and kinder. I lay in the dark and thought, a therapist with good taste is still a therapist. Sunday morning, I woke up petty and did nothing with it. I went for a run and practiced saying, "I need more time," because that's how you win in those rooms. You don't argue the premise, you ask for a different tempo. I showered. I put on a shirt that makes me look employed. At 3, I parked 2 blocks from his office in a building that used to be a dental practice because all therapy offices are either ex-dentists or ex-lawyers. I sat in the car and breathed until I could hear my breath and not the radio in my chest screaming, "Drive away." Rowan's office had plants that looked hydrated and a bookshelf of titles I'd expect, and 2 I didn't. A cookbook and a book of poetry by Mary Oliver. The door to the bigger room was closed. A white noise machine hissed. I checked in with the assistant like I was at a salon. "They're finishing," she whispered, conspiratorial. "Would you like tea?" I declined and stared at the carpet pattern until it looked like pixels. Then his door opened and Mara stepped out, face flushed, eyes swollen in that good cry way, shoulders looser than I'd seen in months. Rowan stood behind her with his therapist smile on, the one with no teeth. "Ready to repair," he said, warm. His hand was on her upper back. He removed it when he saw me see it. We sat. He framed the hour. "We're going to practice reflecting needs, offering reach, and anchoring safety," he said, words like a manual. He asked Mara to speak first. She did. She said, "My calm makes her feel like she's doing feelings wrong." She said, "My kindness sometimes feels like a trap set by a judge who grades on a curve." She said she misses the version of me who wasn't afraid to be foolish. Then Rowan turned to me, head slightly tilted. "This body language reads as curious. When you hear that," he said, "what happens inside?" "I feel accused of my best parts," I said, and immediately hated the way it sounded. "I want to be less excellent," I corrected. "I want to put the spreadsheet down." We did the exercise. It felt like 2 people who used to love swinging on a porch while a third person told us which way to sway. It worked a little. I left hopeful, adjacent. In the car, Mara squeezed my thigh and said, "You did good," and I pretended that sentence doesn't make me 7 years old. For 3 weeks, it got better. Fights lasted 19 minutes, not 4 hours. She put her phone down only 8. I stopped grading our relationship like a quarterly business review. I told a friend at lunch, "Therapy is working," and wiggled my hand the way you do when you want good things to be humble. Then I found the Venmo. Rowan had given us a rate sheet at intake. 175 per session, bill insurance first, collect copays via portal, cancellation fees apply. That's why I didn't recognize the 75 Venmo request to Mara S.A. first name and initial handle. The note read, "Sat add-on song," a heart. Another request 3 days later, 45 late night anchor. Another, 20 T-spill. Cash clients, okay. Sliding scale, okay. A therapist privately charging for a song. He texted my wife as a therapeutic intervention at 1 in the morning. No, no, in a way that made my hands do that cold thing. I didn't want to be the man who snoops. I also didn't want to be the man who pretends not to see a fire because he's scared of looking like the guy who calls 911 for smoke. I opened Mara's laptop with the same reverence you use for a passport. She had the Messages app open because she trusts me, and I'm not writing this to win an award for ethics. The thread with Rowan was pinned. Top. A lighthouse. Scrolling through your wife's text with your therapist is a bit like opening a trunk and finding your favorite sweater in pieces. There were the expected things, reminders to breathe, summaries of sessions, "I'm proud you stayed, try the body scan." There were also things that made my mouth dry, "I miss your voice when the room goes quiet." You don't have to be small here. A photo at 10:14 p.m. of Mara's hand on her own chest with the caption, "Found it." He'd replied with a voice memo, his voice low, intimate. "There you go, right there, stay." Further down, older. The first weekend of the intensive. "We probably shouldn't be texting like this," he'd written. "The rule is no therapy by text." Then, "But rules like to be flexible when a nervous system is learning trust." I kept scrolling. A meme about attachment styles. A link to a playlist titled Anchor. A selfie from Mara in his office, eyes wet, my sweater on her shoulders. The caption, "He says I'm brave." He'd replied, "You're more than brave." My first instinct was to print it all and walk into a licensing board office like a man delivering a head on a platter. My second was to torch the world. I did neither. I took screenshots, I put them in a folder named Lighthouses because I am petty when I'm scared. Then I did the thing I'm good at, I looked for paper. The portal had an audit log if you knew where to click, the place where EHRs keep a diary of who touched what and when. Rowan had opened our chart 72 times in the last month, which is fine if you were billing the time or doing care. He had added 2 non-billable addenda at 12,005 a.m. with the phrase, "See personal communication." He had not uploaded the personal communication because he is not an idiot. He had also changed the diagnosis from relationship problem to unspecified trauma and stressor-related disorder in a Mara-only note filed the night she told him she was having nightmares where I stood in the doorway and graded her crying. Insurance paid more on that code. I know because codes are my love language. I called our insurer's clinical line and asked, hypothetically, what constitutes a conflict of interest for a couple's therapist texting one partner outside of session. The nurse on the line took a breath a little too loud. Documentation and transparency, she said. If the other partner doesn't know and it's not clinically necessary, that's a boundary issue. If there's any indication of dual relationship, we refer to compliance. Dual relationship, I repeated, like a man measuring a wall before he hangs a picture on it. It means being more than one thing to the patient, she said. Therapist and friend, therapist and more. I didn't say more out loud. I put the word in my mouth and let it sit there like ice. I asked Mara to pause therapy. Gentle, I feel like we're bending rules, I said. Can we take a breath and find someone who sticks to the manual? She went still, then performed calm. You want to sabotage the only thing that's helping, she said. You'd rather be right than feel me? I'd rather not lose you in a room I'm paying for, I said. She packed a bag that night for a friend sleepover. She said Moira's name the way people say brands. I watched her find my dot go to Raven Wellness instead, the building where Rowan's office lives. I could have followed. I could have blown it up with a door and a sentence. Instead, I did what men in insurance commercials do when they want to not be the villain. I called the licensing board to ask about reporting procedures in cases of suspected boundary violations. The woman on the phone spoke like a courtroom. If you believe there is sexual misconduct or an inappropriate relationship, she said, we accept confidential complaints with documentation. The clinician will be notified, an investigator will be assigned, and both parties will be interviewed. Do not confront in the meantime. Do not destroy evidence. If there's immediate risk, call law enforcement. Immediate risk, I said. Safety, she said. Coercion, retaliation. I drove. Not in a rage, in that state where your body does what your mind is not sure it's allowed to do. I parked half a block away because I am a coward in the way that keeps people alive. Rowan's building has thin curtains and good heating. The hallway lights leak under doors. It was after 10. The cleaning crew had left. The white noise machine was off. His door was cracked, just enough for sound to forget it was supposed to stay inside. Her laugh, a low male voice. Not syllables, not confession. The sound of two people who have forgotten about microphones and clocks and the part in the manual where the therapist stops being a person. I lifted my phone and started recording, not to go viral, but to save myself later when kindness tried to rewrite scenes. I moved closer and the door, traitorous, gave me 1 inch more. The office lamp made a triangle of light that caught a hand in motion, his pushing hair behind her ear. If this were a movie, that would be the frame where the audience knows and the protagonist still hadn't caught up. I was caught up. I was an Olympic athlete and catching up. Then the phone buzzed in my hand with a text from Mara. Phone died earlier, heading home in a bit. Love you. The glow from her phone sat on Rowan's side table, the lighthouse in miniature. The text was a schedule. The lie was an agenda. Inside, a chair creaked, and there was the unmistakable sound of a body remembering it has a back. I stepped back because I'm not interested in being arrested for knowing what I already knew. I stood in the hallway like furniture. I let the recording run for 30 more seconds. Then I turned and walked down the stairs and out into air, the temperature of an argument. Back in my car, I put the phone face down on the passenger seat and stared at my own hands on the steering wheel like a stranger had lent them to me. I could feel the old part of me wanting to do something dramatic, kick the door, demand repentance, play God with a spreadsheet and a flamethrower. The newer part of me, the one that has learned the rhythm of insurance and licensure and the way institutions like to be told the story by nouns, said, wait, collect, file, choose a hammer later, make sure it's the right one. So I went home. I fed the cat. I took the screenshots off my phone and put them in a folder with a name that would keep me from doing anything stupid tonight. I opened a blank document and wrote a sentence I never thought I'd write in my own house, in my own kitchen, under the soft light we picked out together. My wife is having an affair with our couple's therapist. Then I started writing down everything that comes after. In the morning, I made coffee with hands that wouldn't stop being steady. I wrote 3 lists on a legal pad because writing the thing down made the room less loud, who to notify, what to preserve, what not to do. Under what not to do, I wrote in block letters, don't scream, don't post, don't threaten. Under what to preserve, I wrote, portal audit, EOBs, Venmo screenshots, texts with Lighthouse, consent packet, code of ethics pages. Under who to notify, I wrote, Insurer SIU, Licensing Board, Practice Clinical Director, our HREAMFT Ethics Committee. Then I put the pad in the folder named Lighthouses because pettiness is still a muscle even when you're trying to be holy. I started with the most boring phone call on earth. Insurance, special investigations. The man on the line had the cheerful fatigue of someone who knows how many people bill a feeling like it's a procedure. I kept my voice measured. I'm calling about out-of-hours telehealth charges from our couples therapist to my wife, I said. I have portal logs, EOBs, and text messages suggesting undisclosed after-hours contact and cash side billing through Venmo. I also have reason to believe there's a dual relationship that's prohibited by his code of ethics. I'm not asking you to arrest anyone. I'm asking where to send the file. Email the SIU intake, he said, spelling out a mailbox that sounded like a password. Attach whatever you have. We'll open a case. If there's a licensure issue, file with the state board. We do claims. They do people. Next, the licensing board. The woman who answered spoke in courtroom commas. I explained the boundary crossings in nouns, late-night texting, out-of-session anchor charges via Venmo, undisclosed one-on-one intensives during couples therapy, and a pattern of contact that looked and sounded like romance from the middle of the work. I did not say the word affair. I said, I believe there's sexual misconduct with a current client in a couple's context. She didn't gasp. She asked for dates, addresses, and whether I could provide the intake and consent forms. I could. I emailed the forms with the clause highlighted that said, no separate secret relationships with either party, all out-of-session contact shall be administrative only and documented in the chart. I wrote a short, emotion-free email to the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy Ethics Committee with the complaint number the board gave me, quoted the sections of their code, Rowan's own intake said he adheres to, attached the Venmo screenshots, and hit send. The AAMFT auto-reply promised a human in 5 business days. I printed the auto-reply anyway because a promise is still paper. I considered calling his office and asking for the clinical director. It turns out Raven Wellness was a group, not a solo. Their website had a compliance email. I wrote to it with a subject line, boundary concern, regarding clinician Sutter, urgent. I kept the body to 5 sentences and attached exactly 3 screenshots, the Venmo request, SAT add-on song, the text, crisis line open tonight, might text you at 11, and the portal audit showing a 12:51 a.m. addendum, see personal communication, I CC'd the licensing complaint number. Then I turned my phone face down and put my head on the cool wood of the table and let the quiet sit on my shoulders for exactly 60 seconds. After that, I wrote to Mara, not a manifesto, not even an ask, 5 short lines. I know about you and Rowan. I have filed complaints with the board and our insurer. Please direct any therapy-related communication through your counsel. I am moving to the 2nd bedroom and will begin a separation. Feed the cat at 6. I signed it with my name and not Babe, and I did not reread it because the only thing worse than sending that email is editing it until it bleeds. She didn't answer right away. She called instead. I let it go to voicemail because my voice couldn't be trusted not to confess to loving her. She didn't leave one. She texted, "This is a grotesque misunderstanding." Then, "You are punishing me for getting help." Then, "We didn't do anything wrong." Then, "He says you're dangerous when you're logical." I replied with 3 words, "Through your counsel." At noon, my phone lit with an unknown number and a voice that belongs to people whose names appear under clinical director on websites with photos of ferns. "Mr. Winters, this is Dr. Patel from Raven Wellness. We received your compliance email. We take boundaries extremely seriously. I need to ask a few questions, and then I'm going to ask you to forward the documentation to our internal investigator." She asked for dates, for the Venmo handles, for the portal audit shots. I sent them while we were on the phone. There was a beat, just human, not administrative. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "This is not the work." I believed her because it sounded like she was pulling a splinter out of her own palm. By 3, SIU wrote back with a formal letter. Case number, investigator assigned, request for permission to contact the practice and the provider. I signed the release. At 4, the licensing board sent me the boring email I was waiting for. Complaint accepted, preliminary review underway, investigator will be in touch. I printed it. I put it under lighthouses. I wrote on a sticky, gravity is slow, then fast. At 6, Mara came home. She didn't slam any doors. She dropped her bag, looked at the empty space where she usually put her shoes, and then at me like she was trying to locate the script we usually use to end scenes. "What did you do?" she asked without sitting down. "I told the people in charge of the rules that the rules were broken," I said. "The rest will be adults doing adult jobs." "You humiliated me," she said. "You want him to lose his license because you can't stand the idea that someone knows how to talk to me?" "I want the state to decide whether a therapist can bill our insurance for late-night anchors, charge you for playlists, text you, 'I miss your voice at 1 a.m., put his hand on your back, invite you to weekend intensives without me during couples therapy, and then pretend a lighthouse emoji is clinical," I said. "This is not about my jealousy. This is about my name on bills and my marriage on his calendar while his hands are on your face." She flushed. It wasn't guilt. Not exactly. It was the first sign she'd seen the room the way I'd been seeing it for a week. Then she reached for her defense like a firefighter going for a hose. "Somatic work uses touch," she said. "That's what he does. He helps me feel my body." Our intake says no physical touch without explicit consent by both parties in a couple's context. Our intake says no secrets between individual and couple work. Our intake says a lot of sentences. I can quote because I'm the guy who reads forms, I said, too gently for how mad I was. If he wanted to do somatic work, he should have referred you to an individual therapist with clean boundaries and disclosed it to me. He didn't. He chose a different word, special. "This makes you happy," she said finally, and it was so strange I almost laughed. "This makes you feel righteous." "It makes me feel like I finally did one thing my future self won't have to apologize for," I said. She went to the bedroom and came out with a weekender bag. "Moira's," she said. "Don't lock me out." "I won't," I said. "The lease is in both our names." It was a bureaucratic kindness, and we both knew it. That night, I emailed my boss and asked for 2 days off. "Family emergency," I wrote. He replied with a calendar block and "no need to explain." I slept on the couch even though the bed was empty because the couch was a room for learning. By morning, the practice had done what practices do when their liability wakes up scared. Dr. Patel called to say Rowan had been put on immediate administrative leave pending investigation, all of his clients would be reassigned, and I would receive a letter outlining the process. "We will also be contacting your wife," she said carefully. "I expect this will be upsetting." "I expect a lot of things to be upsetting this week," I said. At 11, an email arrived from Compliance Raven Wellness with the subject, Interim Remedial Actions. In bullet points, the clinician's access to the EHR was suspended, devices collected, personal accounts to be imaged by a third-party forensic vendor, mandatory reporting to the malpractice carrier initiated, regulator notified, all couples cases reviewed for risk. They attached a copy of their internal policy on dual relationships with item 4.1 highlighted. No clinician shall enter into a personal, social, business, or romantic relationship with a current client or a former client within 2 years of the last professional contact. In couples therapy, no separate relationship with either partner is permitted indefinitely. That policy was older than our marriage? Rowan texted me from a number I didn't recognize because he knew the lighthouse would get blocked. "We need to talk man to man," he wrote. "You're hurting her to hurt me. She came to me broken and I gave her back to herself. Don't punish her because your ego can't share air." I did not reply. I forwarded the text to the board and the practice. 10 minutes later, Dr. Patel wrote, "We have advised him that further contact with you or your spouse will be considered retaliation and a violation of interim orders." I printed that too. Mara's lawyer, whose number I recognized from her demand letters to brands that paid net 90, wrote me a different kind of note. Nasty, performative, threatening to countersue for defamation, claiming I'd mischaracterized therapeutic interventions and had an obsessive need to control my wife's healing. Cavish, yes, immigration. Cavish. He knew a family lawyer on the floor below referred me to a malpractice attorney named Tess, whose emails are knives with corks on the tips. Tess wrote back, "Please forward counsel's threatening message to the board investigator as possible witness intimidation. Also, save everything. We're not suing today, we're letting regulators work. Later, we'll discuss a civil demand under 740 ILCS 110, Mental Health and Developmental Disabilities Confidentiality Act, plus common law negligence." The board investigator arrived on a Thursday afternoon with the pallor of a man who had seen too many emails with hearts in the subject line. He took my statement in my kitchen, accepted a carefully curated packet, and asked permission to image my phone. "We'll get warrants for his," he said. "We'll also subpoena the practice for EHR access logs and messaging records. Your insurer has already put a hold on recent claims." "How long?" I asked, even though I know better than to ask time to behave. "Months," he said. "It goes slow, then it goes all at once." It went slow. In that slow, Mara yo-yo-yoed between fury and quiet. She sent a 3-page text the week after he was suspended accusing me of trying to erase her healing. I didn't respond. 2 days later, she sent one line, "I'm scared." I responded to that one, "I know, me too." She didn't ask to come back. I didn't ask her to. Friends pick sides. The ones who love drama asked for screenshots. I didn't send any. The ones who loved me brought tacos and sat on the floor and watched basketball like that could teach a person about faithfulness. My mother mailed me a card with a recipe for chicken soup and a note that read, "I'm angry for you so you don't have to be angry all the time." My sister sent me a playlist with angry girl songs and then crossed it out with a second playlist labeled Dishes and Sleep. I tried a new therapist, someone in Oak Park who runs her practice like a small country. I told her, day one, that I needed a room where I was not a syllabus. She nodded and never once used the word attunement like a spell. We talked about how betrayal lands in the body like a car alarm you can't find. We talked about how to avoid making my life a civics lesson. We talked about forgiveness as a math problem with a variable that might never resolve, and that could be okay. Then the fast part. SIU closed its review with a finding of unsupported billing on 3 late-night codes and a notification to the practice that reimbursements would be recouped. The practice's malpractice carrier sent me a letter saying they'd accepted the claim and would be willing to discuss settlement if the board found violations. The board sent a certified envelope, summary suspension notice, emergency. It laid out allegations, boundary violations, sexual misconduct with a current client, failure to maintain proper records, deception in billing. It suspended Rowan's license pending a full hearing. It used phrases no one wants next to their name: immediate danger to the public, substantial likelihood, evidence of ongoing harm. Mara called me that night, crying so hard I thought she was sick. "He says it's all a misunderstanding," she said, "that they're Puritans, that the board hates somatic work." "The board knows how to read Venmo," I said. "They know the difference between a body scan and a slow song at 1 in the morning." She sobbed. "He says he loves me," she said, like she was handing me something heavy she'd been carrying too long. "I believe he likes what loving you did for the part of him that wants to be a hero," I said. "I also believe he liked getting paid twice." Silence. Then, softly, a question I had been both expecting and dreading because of what it says about the human brain. "Do you think we could still fix us?" she asked. "Not with him in the story," I said. "Not with this version of the past." We filed for divorce the next week. It felt like closing books at the end of a long day, stacking, straightening, knowing some will never be opened again. Our settlement was so boring, a judge signed it without looking up. No children, no house. She paid half the therapy bills that insurance clawed back. He paid the other half through his carrier. Her lawyer tried to keep the letter off paper. Tess insisted on paper. The judge agreed. An order with words in it is what saved strangers later. The hearing on his license happened on a snowy Wednesday when the city sounds woolly. I didn't have to go. I went anyway. It wasn't public, but I got a seat because I am, in their files, a victim. He sat at a table with counsel in a tie that wanted to apologize for itself. Dr. Patel testified about policies about complaints from other couples that had surfaced when they reviewed his cases. The SIU investigator testified about EOBs that looked like midnight and about Venmo notes with hearts. Mara testified by Zoom from a sublet that had plants she was keeping alive. She cried, and even then she told the truth, which is a mercy I will always respect. "I thought he was the only person who could hear me," she said. "I liked it when he broke the rules for me. I didn't notice that meant he could break them for anyone." Rowan tried to say the words that sometimes work: consensual, adult, mutual, clinical innovation. The board chair, a woman with gray hair cut like a decision, asked one question that pulled all the oxygen out of his theory. "Did you inform the husband during active couples therapy that you were initiating out-of-session contact, including physical touch and late-night messaging with his wife?" "No," he said. "Did you document the nature of that touch and messaging in the chart?" she asked. "I elected not to include private content," he said, and his counsel flinched like someone had kicked him under the table. The board revoked his license. Not probation, not a slap. Revoked. He can petition in 5 years if he wants to take the shame for a walk. The order went into a database that compliance people read, that therapists who supervise interns read, that insurance panels read. The malpractice carrier cut a check to cover my legal cost and repaid the insurer. The practice sent me a letter apologizing without using the word fault and offering 3 free sessions with a different clinician to help you restore your trust in the work. I folded it into thirds and put it in the folder. I didn't go back to their building. Mara texted that night, "I'm sorry. No defense, no adjectives, just 2 words that were too late and also exactly right." We met in a cafe where the ceiling is painted like a sky, and people pretend it's not winter by ordering iced things. She looked smaller in honest light. She fiddled with a napkin until it came apart. I told her the only version of truth that wouldn't rot. "I don't think you're evil. I think you were starving and someone fed you sugar and called it lunch. I can't make that lunch healthy by pretending it didn't happen." She nodded like she'd already had that conversation with a mirror. "I loved you," she said. "I don't know where that went." "I loved you too," I said. "I knew exactly where mine went, into a file folder so I don't use it as a weapon." We laughed because sometimes the only way to end a scene is to earn a quiet laugh. Months happened, then a year with fewer sirens in it. I learned that grief becomes administrative if you stop feeding it adjectives, you cancel a streaming service, you change an emergency contact, you take the lighthouse out of your favorites. I stopped going to the grocery store where we used to argue about which yogurt counts as an act of war. I started running a loop that didn't pass as building. I dated badly and then adequately and then once, gently. The woman's name is Leah. She told me on our second date that she prefers boring men with interesting folders. I told her that was the kindest sentence anyone had ever said to me. We still argue about towels. We put them in the dryer for 5 minutes before showers and pretend that's a ritual and not a truce. As for karma, it didn't arrive with a flaming sword. It arrived like a memo. Rowan took down his website. His name showed up in a licensure database with a red box around it. The practice added a mandatory boundaries training module to their onboarding. An insurance webcast featured a slide with bullet points suspiciously similar to my folder. Friends of friends started sentences with, "Did you hear about that therapist who—" And I shrugged because rumor is a fire that doesn't need my air. Mara moved once, then again. She started seeing an older female therapist with 0 Instagram presence and a chair that looked like it believed in spines. She told me months later that they don't text. "She makes me sit with how much I hate that," she said, "and then she makes me do it anyway." That sounded like healing in a language I can respect. Here's what I took from the wreckage and folded into something I can carry. Love isn't exempt from paperwork, and paperwork isn't the enemy of love. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for a story that's gone wrong is to hand it to people who don't care how pretty the characters are. Sometimes justice is a database entry and a paid invoice for your lawyer and a song you delete because it was never a treatment, it was a trick. Tell me your take. Would you have confronted them in the doorway and gone scorched earth, or filed the complaints, gone quiet, and let adults in bad suits do their slow, boring magic? Would you have tried to repair with a brand new therapist, or ended it like I did and refused to let a lighthouse emoji rewrite your vows? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this one kept you listening, hit like so. It finds the next person staring at a Venmo request from their therapist at 1 a.m. and wondering if they're crazy. And subscribe for more long, messy, true-feeling stories where the twist isn't a masked villain, it's a code of ethics, an audit log, and a man who chose paper over noise.